Okay, good morning and welcome to Wilmington. Buenos dias. My name is Brian DeAndrea. I am Senior Vice President at Century Housing. Like so many of our permanent supportive housing developments in LA, the Banning has been on a long and bumpy road. The fact that we're here 4.5 years after signing that purchase and sale agreement feels like a small miracle. But along this bumpy road, we've been fueled by our passion and our North Star at Century. And that's a passion that the late Judge Harry Pregerson personally embodied and imbued upon the Century organization, the passion for giving a hand up to those in need. Thanks in large part to the judge, Century's been doing HHH deals for the better part of the past 20 years, but this is our first true HHH deal in the city of Los Angeles. It's an important development for us. It represents an extension of our permanent supportive housing work at the Villages at Cabrillo in West Long Beach, where we've developed a uniquely Century way of creating community and helping our residents recover and thrive. But we're not in Long Beach this morning, we're in Wilmington. And with this development, we have channeled the entrepreneurial spirit of Mr. Phineas Banning, one of the prominent early figures in the development of the harbor area. The Banning will provide beautiful homes in an inspiring community for 64 households experiencing homelessness locally, including individuals and small families. It's also a precursor to our larger development efforts in San Pedro, where we're working with our partners, the Richmond Group and National Corps and HACLA, to transform the 478-unit Rancho San Pedro public housing site into a beautiful mixed-income, mixed-use community. But today, we're here to celebrate the team that helped us arrive at this special moment. It takes a village, as the saying goes, and we're very grateful to have all of our partners, our friends, our electeds, our key stakeholders with us today under one beautiful tent. You'll hear from some of them today, but let me first start by acknowledging some of our lenders, including the City of Los Angeles, leading with its HHH investment through LAHD under the leadership of Ann Sewell and Daniel Huynh, along with Mayor Garcetti and Councilman Buscaino. The County of Los Angeles with its No Place Like Home investment through LACTA, under the direction of Emilio Salas, Lynn Catano, Matt Lust, Tracy Mann, along with Supervisor Hahn, and DMH, including Renee Turner. HACLA with its commitment of project-based vouchers, and we're pleased to have Carlos Van Natter here under the leadership of Doug Guthrie. The Federal Home Loan Bank with its AHP financing. Wells Fargo with its construction debt and equity investment thanks to Paul Buckland and Christian Varmerkatz. Citibank with its perm loan commitment thanks to Sonia Ram and Hal Lee, and Century's lending team under the helm of Josh Hamilton, who provided acquisition financing for the project. I also want to acknowledge our extraordinary project team, including the architects at GGA, including Ali, Stacy, Jin, Henry, and Maria, our construction manager and broker, Duke Cook, Walton Construction, including Lee Jackson, Blake, Paul, Marcus, Ronnie, Jose, and Jorge, along with our Century project team, including Gil, Oscar, Brian Ramirez, Paige, Andrea, and so many others. These developments are never easy, and on behalf of Century and our board of directors, we are just so grateful to all of our investors, our lenders, partners, and friends who have placed their trust and resources in Century. Homelessness is the crisis of our time. Last night, tens of thousands of Angelenos spent their night on the street or in their cars under bridges. It's an intransigent issue, one that tears at our moral fiber and tugs at our conscience. And tackling it requires resolve, urgency, compassion, and leadership. Since 2013, Angelenos have benefited from the skilled hand, clear vision, and steadfast leadership of our mayor, Eric Garcetti. His time in office has revealed his passion for justice, for dignity and equality for all people on a range of issues, from the minimum wage to climate change, higher education, quality of life, and of course, the issue of our time. His leadership on Prop HHH and the LA County Companion Measure H has leveraged billions of dollars of investment with the goal of creating more than 10,000 supportive homes, along with the 27 bridge home shelters sprinkled throughout Los Angeles. And among those 10,000 supportive homes are these very 64 homes that will soon grace this site at the banding that we're celebrating the groundbreaking for today. We appreciate the mayor's leadership during this heart-wrenching time. It's moments like these that offer sustenance and hope as we tackle this crisis together. We're so grateful the mayor could join us this morning to celebrate. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Garcetti.
Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you for your articulateness. Thank you for the overly kind introduction. And thank you all for being here, because it was Jackie Goldberg, my predecessor on the city council, who once said, you got to be careful which groundbreakings you go to, because you don't know if there's going to be a ribbon cutting. But projects like this, we know, with the leadership team that is here, with the coalition that has been built, that we're going to be here both at the groundbreaking and at the ribbon cutting. And Brian, you and the entire Century team are just extraordinary, as good as it comes. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm glad you mentioned Judge Pragerson. I want to give my thanks to Supervisor Von Burke, who's here with her handsome husband, Bill Burke, as well, and all the folks who built up Century as really the model of, it's interesting, the federal government on the infrastructure bill, looking at the way that freeways and infrastructure cut up communities. Century figured a way to do it with a conscience, that whatever we needed to lay down in infrastructure wouldn't be done at the cost of community, it would be done to build up community. So let's give Century a round of applause and thank them for the incredible work. I want to thank my brother, Councilmember Joe Buscaino, who was stuck and couldn't be here, but I know is very much here, and very much he and his team have been a huge part of this. I want to thank also the dynamic duo of Stephen Bradford, State Senator, always on the list of best dressed, and Assemblymember Mike Gibson, who give him a run for the money. I don't want to pretend you're not well dressed too, but he's got the tie on. See, if you put the two of us together, you get him. No jacket, tie, jacket, no tie. You got the full thing there. And to everybody, the county, to Hakla and Carlos, to our amazing housing department. You only have to walk a couple blocks from here to be at the most extraordinary port complex, the third biggest port in the world, the biggest in America. And you see container after container stacked up with the dreams of communities, the toys that kids will get for the holiday, the hardware that build homes, the things that connect us with the world and the world with us. And we know recently what happens when a snarl hits that supply chain, just how critical the people are. So I want to thank the Wilmington community too. Our goddaughter lives here. To see the support, as I was saying to the press, you know, people get really upset about homelessness, like I do, like you do. But then sometimes they also get really upset about building projects like this. And you got to choose what you want to be upset about. You can't be upset about both. You either have to be upset about homelessness and build something, or if you want to, I guess you could be upset about building stuff, but you have to accept homelessness. But none of us want to do that. And so when we see this community step up and support a project like this, it speaks a lot about our council office, our neighborhood council, and also remember this plot of land was a polluted piece of land that is from the legacy of this being the oil industry. And we recently banned oil drilling in the city of Los Angeles, something that really, after 100 years of communities like Wilmington bearing the brunt of having oil wells literally in their backyard, and as we transition our work to zero-emission vehicles at the port and what we drive, it's going to be absolutely critical. So the city sees the crossroads of the past, present, and future here today. But we also are here because of the voters, and I always want to thank the voters who overwhelmingly, above our wildest projections, passed measure Proposition HHH, the largest local housing construction, homeless housing construction measure in American history, $1.2 billion to leverage. It does about 10,000 directly, but 12,000 units of affordable housing and homeless housing. When I became council member, and even at the beginning time as mayor, we would come to a groundbreaking or ribbon cutting maybe once every 3 months on average. I'm literally going to one a week now, thanks to the voters. We're going to see, we started about 300 units. About 300 units a year was our statistic in 2013 when I became mayor. This year, next year, we're going to have 2,000 units, so more than a 6-fold increase. And what I would say to my successor is double down on that. And to voters who will have the chance to vote on a permanent source of housing dollars that would be about 5-fold what we have right now, I hope they will support the housing measure that puts a small tax on sales of ultra luxury homes in Los Angeles where people make money way above inflation, but would give us hundreds of millions of dollars a year to continue this as well. But we've brought the total number of supportive and affordable housing units under construction already right now to 8,300. And we set out to triple the number of new units to 1,000 units a year, but as I mentioned, we've more than doubled that. And in fact, we've doubled, redoubled, nearly doubled again our production of supportive housing units, and overall housing units in the entire city, because we need them at all levels, have tripled just in the last 8 years. Again, we need to double down on that, but that math doesn't capture the stories. We can still talk about the statistics, we can talk about the funding. What I love is when you meet the new tenants who come in, because many of them will have grown up right here in Wilmington, are living right now in a car or on the street. We know who they are, we just don't have the units. Some of them are holding vouchers right now. And I know, contrary to what you might read, HECLA is working really hard and really heroically and putting record numbers of people with record numbers of vouchers into housing. But we can't build these units fast enough. So for these 64 units and 63 folks who are formerly homeless, maybe 64 if the manager too, we will be able to see that move forward. And also, contrary to what you might hear or read, Prop HHH is coming in 2 years early, 1,000 units more, and 15,000 less in subsidy per unit than what we promised the voters. So cheaper, more, and faster. And it's called leverage, by the way. It's amazing to see. We put in, I think I have the stats here, this stack that we know is so complicated of city and county and housing authority and federal funds and the private dollars, and thank you to Citibank and to our private lenders as well as the rents that people here will pay, because people also think that this is free housing, but everybody will pay their fair share. We've seen that stack now. The HHH piece leverages about $4, $3 to $4 of additional funding. So when the voters put that in, think about it this way. About $7.5 million of HHH dollars are leveraging more than $40 million of funding to build this. That's a really good deal. If I told you to get a house and you could put in $1 and you get 3 more for free, we would do that. So I hope that voters will continue to make sure that that happens. We're also making it easier and quicker to build these units, and I hope that'll be your experience here. I know how long you've been waiting to remediate, to clean this up, but now with Executive Directive 30, we brought together 11 different city departments, because maybe housing department's doing great, but then you run into the fire department, or engineering, or transportation, or another one where we have to get those sign-offs. It's sped up now. First of all, it moves all these projects to the front of the line, and it's sped up the approvals by an average of 120 days. That's 4 months of quicker projects. So we have doubled the number of completed projects. We've sped up how quickly it is thanks to our state. We've passed that in the city of LA, you don't have to go through CEQA for these projects at all anymore, which is amazing. That means that we don't have to go through the lawsuits. We don't have to go one person who's opposing this. And that means that we can do these projects as well. So this is a long-term solution. It really is everybody coming here together. There's a great poem by Robert Browning that I read a few months ago. Because I always try to process, like, most political leaders run away from homelessness, and I understand why. You can't solve it overnight. It's a reflection of so many traumas meeting high rent. It's a mental health crisis as much as it is a housing crisis. But we've run to it, those leaders that are here, and I certainly have, because I try to explain to folks why do you keep talking about ending homelessness, I get asked all the time. I say, well, that has to be our goal. And in this poem about the Italian painter Andrea del Sarto, Robert Browning wrote, "A man's reach must always exceed his grasp." And since we live in 2022, we should say, a man or woman's reach must always exceed their grasp. In other words, you think about those moments you reach for things you don't think you can hold. The end of slavery, a slave who fights for that, but he never tastes his freedom, so his son will. A woman who fights for the right to vote, and she never gets to vote in any election, but her granddaughter and great-granddaughter are today. Marriage equality, those things that we don't think we'll ever be able to hold. We fight for them so that one day somebody will hold them. And the second line in that poem says, after all, what's a heaven for? And I would say, after all, what are we here for, Los Angeles, if not that? To reach beyond our grasp, to imagining a day that projects like the Banning will make homelessness a thing of the past and make this truly a city of angels once again. Thank you, and congratulations on the ground.
Thank you so much, Mayor, for those inspiring words. Before proceeding, I'd like to acknowledge a couple of special guests that are with us today. From Supervisor Hahn's team, Erica Velasquez is with us. Ron Griffith, our President and CEO at Century, is with us this morning. This morning, we are in the presence of Dee Dee Schwab and Cazette Dunlap, the sellers of this property, who we spent a number of years working with, and we greatly appreciate your accommodation and support through the process. Tim McCosker, former ED of Alta C and board of directors member for the San Pedro Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Tim. And I just want to also acknowledge the John Mendez Pony Baseball League, which is right here to the backside, who have allowed us to use their site for parking this morning. So thank you to the Baseball League. Now, it brings me great pleasure this morning to introduce the chairwoman of our board of directors at Century, Yvonne Burke. The Honorable Yvonne Burke has had just a distinguished career of public service, starting in the California State Assembly, 3 terms in Congress, 16 years on the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, where she represented the 2nd District. Yvonne was appointed to the Amtrak Board of Directors by President Obama in 2012, where she continues to serve our nation. And of course, Yvonne is a longstanding board member and current chair of the Century Housing Board of Directors, where she just brings incredible experience and perspective to bear on Century's work. So a very warm welcome for Yvonne Burke.
Thank you, Brian, and you have done such a marvelous job. And to you and your staff, let's give them a big hand. He's worked very hard, and today it's an incredibly proud moment for Century. Our organization was established more than 27 years ago to meet the housing needs of this region. Over that time, we have invested more than $2.3 billion and helped to create more than 50,000 homes. But with more than 60,000 Angelinos still suffering the trauma of homelessness, our work is far from done. There are many reasons for the housing crisis in Los Angeles. Of course, we also go all through California. We aren't just right here. But one thing we know, housing is needed. Century is thrilled to partner with each of you in developing those 64 dignified homes at Banning. They will be beautiful and make a change in this community. Homes that will serve as a springboard for recovery, transformation, and hope for families and individuals in crisis. We are incredibly grateful for the support of the City of Los Angeles and you, Mayor, with its HHH financing, and the County of Los Angeles with its No Place Like Home financing. Thanks to the leadership of Supervisor Hahn, Mayor Garcetti, Councilman Buscaino, these investments will create desperately needed, high-quality housing infrastructure that will stand the test of time. And these homes will complement other critical investments in the area. Wilmington Bridge Home Shelter, located around the way. We acknowledge Wells Fargo for its construction financing and equity investment. We've had a deep and productive partnership with Wells Fargo that has expanded the past 10 years. And we appreciate the investment of our newest financial partner, Citibank, who is providing the permanent financing for this project. As Brian mentioned, Century has a wealth of experience in creating supportive housing. In fact, this year, we celebrate 25th anniversary of the Villages at Cabrillo, located just south of the Banning and in the city of Long Beach. It's there at the Villages that we've crafted and honed our approach to serving the needs of our community's most vulnerable. Century looks forward to growing its reach and impact across the harbor into Wilmington and the Banning. And so on behalf of Century Board of Directors, I'd like to commend each and all of you for your valuable contributions to this project. Century can't go it alone, and we are more appreciative for your trust, your partnership, and enjoy this groundbreaking. Thank you very much. Great, man. Good for you to be here.
Thank you, Yvonne. This morning, we are thrilled to welcome Fernando Navarrete, who is representing our city councilman, Joe Buscaino. Unfortunately, the councilman was waylaid in Atlanta. His flight was canceled and is not able to join us this morning. But the city councilman has been a public servant for decades, dating back to his 15 years with the Los Angeles Police Department and later joining the city council in 2012. Councilman Buscaino has been a really dedicated supporter of this project from the beginning when we began discussions with him and his team. And like Century, the councilman appreciates the need to really establish a continuum of care and housing ranging from low barrier shelters all the way up and through permanent supportive housing developments like the Banning. He should be commended for his support of the Bridge Home Shelter, which there are 3 in his district, including the one that Yvonne mentioned, which is literally just 2 blocks that way. It's not an either-or choice, and we appreciate the councilman's investment in this continuum of care, including these 64 beautiful homes that'll soon be found on this piece of real estate. I also want to acknowledge the councilman for his support of our work in San Pedro, where with our partners in HACLA, we'll be revitalizing that aging Rancho San Pedro housing development and turning it into close to 1,600 wonderful homes, affordable, market rate, for sale, you name it. We've got just a tremendous community plan that we worked on there that will offer all of the 1,300 Rancho San Pedro residents an opportunity to come back with wonderful opportunities for growth and empowerment and wellness. And so without further ado, we'd like to welcome Fernando.
All right, good morning. Well, as a staff member, I can tell you it's not an everyday thing that you're in the same lineup as the mayor of Los Angeles, so we'll give this a try. Well, good morning, everyone. First and foremost, the councilman sent his sincerest apologies, as you've heard, for not being here this morning. He was excited for this groundbreaking, obviously, but unfortunately, due to travel disruptions, as we've been seeing him throughout the country, he's unable to be here today, but obviously I'm speaking on his behalf. My name is Fernando Navarrete. I have the privilege to serve this community as the deputy and as a public works deputy for Councilman Buscaino. On the second hand, I also have the pleasure of living in this community, and I lived here for the last 2 decades. While the council member is not here, I can tell you that he's extremely proud and excited about this construction. As you've heard, just east of here on Eubank, a bridge home exists, a temporary housing solution that under the leadership of Mayor Eric Garcetti and Councilmember Joe Buscaino opened its doors to 100 temporary shelter beds. While emergency interim housing is a necessary tool to stop this crisis, it's part of the solution. Of course, we want to provide stable, long-term housing for our unhoused neighbors. That is why during the ribbon cutting of a bridge housing, Councilmember Buscaino committed to doing everything in his power to housing in his entire district, including here in Wilmington. Now, today we honor that commitment by beginning construction of the Banning. It is permanent housing solutions like this one here today that really create permanent change and provide the necessary resources for those individuals who will ultimately call the Banning home. The road here has not been easy, and certainly not our advocacy. But the Wilmington community took a leap of faith and trusted us, and really trusted all of us here today. They said yes. Yes to solutions, yes to housing, and yes to a safe neighborhood for all. The 64 units that will be built here on this lot brings us closer to ending homelessness. But more importantly, will give each and every person living here a sense of hope, security, and dignity. As a Wilmington resident, I know firsthand the challenges we face in this community, dealing with environmental burdens, living near ports and refineries, dealing with truck traffic, container traffic through our residential streets, and being one of the many overlooked communities of color in the city. That is why I'm so proud to work for a council member who has continued to fight for the Wilmington community throughout his decade as council member. Housing the unhoused is just one part of that solution, but it's also our economic revitalization of Avalon, our pedestrian and cyclist safety improvements throughout our neighborhood, our massive investment in green space in the development of the Wilmington waterfront. And I'm really excited about the next decade and what it holds for this community. In closing, I want to thank Brian and his incredible team at Century Housing for their tireless work and solutions-oriented investment in solving homelessness in Los Angeles, as well as the incredible partners and stakeholders here today. You've made this possible. As Mayor Eric Garcetti mentioned, a special thank you to the voters for approving HHH and the funds that are needed to build this type of housing. Most importantly, I want to thank the Wilmington community for trusting us, believing in solutions, and being part of the solution to solving the biggest crisis in Los Angeles. Thank you all for your time.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Oscar Alvarado. I'm Vice President of Housing Development for Century Housing. And this morning I have the pleasure of introducing Senator Stephen Bradford to the stage. Senator Bradford is a dedicated civil servant, having skillfully represented his constituents over the course of the past 2 decades, from the Gardena City Council to the State Assembly, and for the last, since 2017, the State Senate. During his tenure in the legislature, Senator Bradford has authored scores of pieces of legislation. He's had a very active committee schedule, including public safety, appropriations, and energy. He's brought hundreds of millions of dollars to investment in the district, and he's been especially supportive of our work in the Harbor region, both here in Wilmington and the work that we're doing in San Pedro. We're very grateful the Senator was able to join us this morning. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Boy, am I that bad? The mayor left. Wow. Good morning. It's truly an honor to be here and join all of you here gathered for this very important groundbreaking and dedication. And as has been stated, we couldn't be here, or wouldn't be here, I should say, without Brian and his leadership with Century Affordable Development Incorporation, CADI. So thank you for your work and your vision. Also to Councilman Joe Buscaino in his absence for his leadership in this region. But most importantly, the voters of Los Angeles for having the vision and the courage to pass Measure HHH that makes a lot of this funding available for affordable housing that is so badly needed, not only in the Wilmington area, but throughout the city of Los Angeles and throughout the state of California for sure. And we couldn't go without also mentioning the county of Los Angeles for their program, No Place Like Home. And as a legislator, I stand here somewhat responsible for us needing all this outside funding because we did something in 2011 that made it harder to build homes throughout the state of California. We got rid of a redevelopment agency, an agency that helped make housing affordable, to help developers write down dirt. So many times we think what's good, we come to see we probably helped exacerbate the homeless program because we haven't built homes in the last 11 years because of the elimination of the redevelopment agency. So it's vitally important that we have this type of public-private partnership to fill the gap that has been created by the absence of a redevelopment agency. And this banding project will provide not only 64 units of housing for the unhoused and in this area, but also creating jobs. It's an economic opportunity as well. So I commend the city for committing to committed to the workforce labor agreement for local hires to help create jobs in the area for residents who live here or will soon live here. We not only provide solutions to housing, but also to create jobs for our local community. This project is an example of what can be accomplished when we bring both public and private investment together to create a partnership which will, and when we are truly committed to creating housing programs and policies that support diversity, equity, and inclusion in our communities, and this is what this project represents. Thank you again for including me in this very important occasion. I'm excited to see this wonderful oasis in our district, which will again provide housing and jobs. But I'm more excited about December of next year, when we're here for the ribbon cutting, and when we see those 64 families who are being handed the keys. So I look forward to that monumentous occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. And next, I'd like to introduce Assemblymember Mike Gibson. He represents California's 64th District, which includes the communities of Compton, North Long Beach, Watts Willowbrook, and Carson, where he served as council member for almost 10 years. Assemblymember Gibson has served as Democratic Caucus Chair, and in his tenure in the Assembly, he has supported legislation leading to the first state earned income tax credit for families, cap and trade policies combating homelessness and criminal justice reform. He's also been a big supporter of our work in San Pedro, where we're working on the redevelopment of the Rancho San Pedro community and helping us garner resources for that effort. Please help me welcome Assemblymember.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me say buenos dias, good morning. I'm delighted to be here, and I welcome you to the 64th State Assembly District. Brian, to your team, thank you very much for all that you have done and all that you will do in order to write a new narrative for the people who will live here at this property. I want to recognize and also thank our mayor, our state senator, Steve Bradford, Supervisor Yvonne Burke, and also Dr. William Burke. Can you do me a favor? Can you give them a round of applause for being here? And we appreciate their leadership. Century Housing Development, let me say thank you very much again. HACLA, to Citibank, my bank that I bank with, Wells Fargo, and everyone who absolutely contribute to this historic day. I am proud to represent this community. I'm proud, one, to stand and sit with each and every one of you as we broke ground and as we threw the dirt that will be transformed at this location into a beautiful place that a lot of people, Sergio, everyone that will come across the door, they will call this place home. Let me say that again. They will call this place Ron home. Just like each and every one of you, you go to, after the end of the day, you will go to your home. You will put your key in the door, and you will walk over that threshold, and you will call that place like home. In the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy talked about no place like home. Well, this is that place that people who've been left out, left for dead, and written out as insignificant will now have an opportunity. Watch this. Will now have an opportunity to call this place, Wilmington, California, their home. And we are excited about one, not only providing dignity and respect, because I may be the only member who spend the night with homeless people. My last time spending the night was in 2019, where my team was spending the night here with homeless individuals, so that it could help me understand what the needs are in our community, especially around homelessness. And some people say that we will never end homelessness. Well, damn it, we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that no person is homeless in the state of California, in Los Angeles. You should put your hands together and just did that. Yes. So today is a testament of the work and the determination and the top priority on our agenda to making sure that we're going to house those who are homeless, Tim. We want to make sure that we provide shelter to these 64 units that will rest right here for generations to come. I want to say that the state was in error when they took away redevelopment. Senator Bradford, I was on the city council and fought extremely hard to making sure that we maintain redevelopment so we would not be in the situation we're in right now. So we can learn from our mistakes by, one, earmarking this day that will be written and chronicled in the books that we stood to making sure that we did everything that we can to end homelessness in this state. I want to thank again Century Housing for doing a yeoman's job, and we stand to be ready and willing and able to do not only the heavy lifting, but also be one of the first people to walk in when people receive their keys and call this place home.
Thank you very much again, Assemblymember Gibson. Finally, I'd like to welcome this morning to the stage Carlos Fandander, Director of Section 8 for the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles. In his current role at HACLA, Carlos oversees all of the authority's rental subsidy programs, including project-based vouchers, HUD-VASH, and continuum of care programs. I've had the pleasure of knowing Carlos for 15 plus years or so. We were doing the math a little earlier today, so we thank him for his long tenure at HACLA and all the work that he's done and the families he's helped to house. Project-based Section 8 vouchers are immensely important to projects like the Banning. We could not operate our buildings with the well-being of our tenants in mind without the help of that operating subsidy. It's extremely important, and the 63 project-based vouchers that were awarded by HACLA to the Banning will support the families who live here for 20 years. I'll be welcome Carlos.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you, Brian. Welcome, everybody, on this beautiful morning. On behalf of our President and CEO, Doug Guthrie, the Housing Authority is proud to partner with Century Housing at the groundbreaking of the Banning Apartments. The Housing Authority is involved, as you just heard, by providing the rental or operating subsidy to the tenants. So what does that mean exactly? We determine tenants' income, and they will pay 30% of their income towards rent to live in the units at this building. The Housing Authority pays the difference directly to the developer. So that's one of the 3 legs of the permanent supportive housing stool that is talked about a lot. To get any of these buildings off the ground and going, you need the capital just to build the place, and there are so many of you all involved in that, providing the funding to Century to do that. The Housing Authority provides the operating subsidy that allows the families to live here in the building, and we are providing 63 project-based vouchers, and they're good for 20 years, but they can be renewed for 20 more, so it goes into perpetuity pretty much. And then the third leg of the stool is the supportive services that are crucial in helping the families stay housed, get on their feet, and move on to the lives they want to lead. So on behalf of our agency, we're really proud to work with Century Housing. At HACLA, we provide rental subsidy to over 58,000 families across the city. And 40% of those families, our resources are targeted towards the homeless. So we're very much involved in addressing the homeless issue in the city of Los Angeles. And this is how we're going to solve the homeless problem. Building by building, voucher by voucher in every part of the city. So it's great to be doing this building with you all here in the harbor area. The mayor just is jamming over to the west side where there's a ribbon cutting on another building in West LA. We're doing buildings in East LA and the Valley all across this city, and that's how we're going to solve homelessness, one family and individual at a time. This is the first project that we're doing in our PPV program with Century. We have a second one coming up. We're also working on the Rancho San Pedro project, which will triple the density and the number of units there on that beautiful site in San Pedro. So we look forward to the opening of this building in December of next year and the more work to come with Century. Thank you very much.
1, 2, 3.